Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Simon.
How are you today?
I'm feeling jolly wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for asking.
Good to hear, and my pleasure so to do.
And how are you?
I'm equally feeling not too shabby, thank you.
Well, that's very good.
So, hello to everyone who happens to be listening to us.
There are people listening to us.
Yes, there are, but we're no stranger to that, are we?
We're not, because voiceovers are listened to a lot, and that's what we do.
Yes, indeed. My name's Simon Wells.
Hello.
Hello. Who are you?
Me?
Yeah.
People call me Fielding, Bruce Fielding.
Do they?
No, not really.
Is that because that's your name?
They generally call me Oi.
So here we are. We are two professional voiceover artists, which is how we happen to know each other because we network in those areas. But primarily, we are both nerds. We are both lovers of facts and trivia and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we know each other through voiceover. We like each other because we're both nerds.
There we go.
Yeah.
Good way of putting it. We came for the voiceover, we stayed for the facts.
Exactly.
And every week we sit here in this wonderful little realm that we call Factoraly, in which we pick a seemingly mundane subject every week and we chat about it and we pick out the interesting facts and so on.
Yeah, generally the subjects that we try and find subjects that are a bit dull.
Yeah.
What do you reckon about trousers then?
I reckon trousers. Well, I do like trousers.
Do you? Do you hardly ever go anywhere without them?
I'm wearing some now.
Are you?
In fact. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Well, I can't see, obviously, because we're looking at each other on a video chat thing.
Yes,
so.
From the waist up.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that you're wearing trousers as well. You might not. You might be wearing your kilt.
Well, yes. I mean, the kilt does come in handy, especially the utility kilt. That's very handy.
So trousers.
Trousers.
How long have trousers been around? Do you know?
About 36 inches.
Right, okay, yeah. That's generally how long mine are around as well.
I don't know. Are they Egyptian 3,000 years old or Roman 2,000 years? I mean, how old are they?
It always seems to come down to those two options, doesn't it? In this particular occasion, Chinese. The oldest pair of trousers that has been found in various excavations and so on are from around the 13th to 10th century BC, which is way older than I would have given it credit for, found in Turpan in western China. They were made of wool, they had very straight legs and a very wide crotch, and it's been assumed that they were probably created for horse riders.
Yes. Horses seem to have had a lot to do with trousers.
I thought you were going to say horses tend to wear a lot of trousers, four-legged ones.
No, it seems like horses and wars and battles and fighting have had an awful lot to do with trousers.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
It seems, you don't want to be wearing a tunic when you're sitting on a horse.
No, and I would imagine, I don't know, would sort of Celtic kilt wearers have ridden horseback?
You don't see them too much on horses, do you? They're generally running down mountains.
Shouting freedom.
Yes, with blue faces.
Yes, exactly. But yes, trousers are useful for horse riding, as you say. Sort of if you try to get on a horse wearing a kimono or a long robe or a kilt or anything like that, it sort of gets in the way. If you just have a nice pair of trousers, then that's far easier. I started looking at, why do we call it a pair of trousers? It's one item. It's one unit of clothing.
It's like a pair of kippers. Why do you call it a pair of kippers when you're buying a kipper?
A pair of glasses, a pair of tweezers, a pair of scissors.
Yes.
They come as one single unit.
Yes.
And there are a couple of alternative suggestions for this. One suggestion, which actually has very, very little evidence, but I like the idea of, is that originally trousers were two separate items. You had one leg and you had another leg. You put them both on and you tied them together at the waist. Each of those things was a singular trouser, and therefore you had a pair of trousers. There is very, very little evidence to suggest that this was a widespread thing. They did exist, but they weren't common, and therefore that's kind of been debunked. Another option is that simply the etymology of the word. So trousers, spelt as it is in English first comes around in the 17th century. And it comes through sort of Irish, Scottish, Celtic regions. The Irish had trus, the Scottish had trews.
Yes, as in Donald, where's your trousers?
There we go. And a combination of those two words, you had a Celtic word, trousas.
Okay.
Which ends with an S, and therefore to us English simpletons, it sounds like that's a pluralised word. Therefore, we called it trousers, and someone suddenly went, why are there two of them?
Except, I mean, this may be an American thing that's been pulled over.
Sure.
But when you're talking about underpants, you talk about a pair of underpants.
Yes.
And there's no way that you could possibly have two separate things that make themselves into one underpant.
No, you're right. Now, this is interesting. I had a brief look at the American word pants. And if I take nothing else away from this episode, this is a fact that's going to stay with me for my entire life. I love this fact. So, I don't know about you, I have a tendency to deride the Americans for getting the language wrong.
No, never.
But it turns out they're actually on the right side of pants.
Okay.
So, in Europe, we had pantaloons.
Okay.
Pants is a shortening of pantaloons.
Okay.
And we had pants, written as pants, being short for pantaloons. We had that before we had underpants. So underpants are underpants because they went under your pants.
Yes.
Therefore, actually, the American usage of pants being trousers goes back longer ago than the word pants used as underpants.
Right.
So all the times we say, oh, you can't call them pants, we were calling them pants because of pantaloons. And it turns out pantaloon is a theatrical character. There was a fella called Pantaloon who existed alongside Harlequin and the clown and so on in the 16th century. And this fella Pantaloon was quite comical looking and had a particularly flamboyant pair of trousers. And that's why we called them pantaloons.
Commedia dell'arte.
Very good. Do it again.
Commedia dell'arte.
Yes. Also the Harlequinade.
Yes.
All of that stuff.
But Commedia dell'arte, still, character called Pantalon. Definitely.
Yes. I had never realised it before, but there we go. We have pants because of a comedic character called Pantalon.
There you go.
In school uniform terms, I seem to remember the phrase short trousers.
Yes.
In summer, you would wear short trousers.
Yes.
Which is why we have the word shorts, because it's short for short trousers.
Yes.
So in school uniforms, you get short trousers and long trousers as opposed to trousers and shorts.
Yes.
So by definition, trousers technically have to end somewhere between your knee and your ankle.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're shorts.
Yeah. And men or women or both?
Either or.
Not until quite recently.
Oh.
Well, we talked about horses. And women used to wear a sort of trouser, but they used to wear it underneath a dress. So you'd never know that women were wearing trousers.
Ah.
And women in trousers is quite interesting. For example, in America, up until about the 70s, it was sometimes against the law for women to wear trousers in offices or classrooms and restaurants in the United States.
Up until the 1970s?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the first woman to go into Congress wearing trousers was Charlotte Reed in 1969.
Gosh, as late as that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And in France, in Paris, there was a bylaw that required women in Paris to ask permission from city authorities before, quote, dressing as men.
Oh, my goodness.
Including wearing trousers.
Yeah.
But there were exceptions. If you were holding a bicycle's handlebar or the reins of a horse, you were allowed to wear trousers. And the idea was that this was intended to prevent women from wearing the pantaloons, which we mentioned before, which were fashionable with Parisian rebels during the French Revolution.
Yes, of course, yes.
And that was revoked in 2013. So
No
up
way.
until 2013, you could still be done for wearing trousers in public as a woman, unless you were holding onto a horse or a bicycle.
Oh, that's so obscure, isn't it?
Yeah. Quite recently, actually, in 2014, in an Indian family court in Mumbai, the judge ruled that a husband objecting to his wife wearing a kurta and jeans and forcing her to wear a sari amounted to cruelty inflicted by the husband and was grounds to divorce.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, good for her.
Yes, it's one of those rebellious acts that, women wearing trousers was a rebellious act.
Yeah.
Talking of actually rules about trousers, that there was another wonderful rule in Russia,
Right.
which was Tsar Peter the Great. In 1701, he passed a law requiring all Russians to wear trousers,
Really?
with the exception of farmers and clergy.
What were they allowed to wear, I wonder?
Well, I imagine a cassock for clergy.
Yeah.
And farmers, I have no idea. Maybe just very long Wellingtons.
How interesting.
I have no idea.
Huh. So I had a bit of a look at the different styles of trousers over the years. And these things I mentioned earlier on, found in 3000 BC in China, that seem to be very distinctly trouser-like.
Yeah.
It suddenly occurred to me that since then trousers have got shorter and then longer again. I took a brief look at breeches.
Yes. I've got a pair of +4s.
Of course you have.
Do you know why they're called +4s?
Oh, I used to know this. It's somewhere in the back of my mind palace. No, go on.
So they're 4 inches below the knee.
Oh, is that right?
You can get +2s, +4s, +6s.
Oh, that's great. I thought they were sort of going to be worn by boys who were 4 years old and over, or something like that.
No, I have a pair of tweed +4s.
Jolly good. When was the last time you had occasion to wear them?
They've been sitting in my dressing up drawer for quite some time.
Round of golf, anybody?
Quite.
But yes, I had a look at breeches, as they're officially called, or breeches, as they were named in lower classes.
Yeah.
And these are those sort of trousers that rise quite high up around the waist, and then they stop just right on the knee. And I automatically think of the musical Hamilton, or I think of Prince George in Blackadder III.
Are these the ones that have like a contrasting colour in the pleats?
Oh, I don't know about that one, actually.
So
Maybe.
you see like the guards in the Tower of London.
Oh, I see. Yes,
they wear
okay.
breeches, but they're sort of slightly balloony breeches. And
Yes, that's right.
They have a pleat.
Those are very sort of specific breeches.
Okay.
But you sort of picture any adaptation of a Jane Austen novel. Picture Mr. Darcy wearing those sort of beige things that stop around the knee, and then he's got a pair of stockings or long
Right.
socks or whatever below the knee.
Right.
Those are breeches.
Okay.
And they were popular from the 14th all the way through to the 19th century. And then eventually we sort of got back to this idea of long trousers. And it sort of seemed to happen very abruptly in the 1820s that the previous generation all wore breeches, the next generation all wore trousers. And Prince Albert was right in between those two eras. So there are pictures of Prince Albert in his younger years wearing breeches and in his older years wearing trousers. And it happened very, very distinctly around that sort of early 1800s. You look at pictures from the Punch magazine or any sort of pictures of politicians or whatever. They're all very much wearing straight trousers with a nice thick crease down the middle.
Yeah.
The generation before, they were all wearing breeches and stockings, and they would have sort of looked around at all of these gentlemen wearing trousers thinking, what on earth are you doing, sir?
Yes.
In the times of wearing breeches, when a boy became a man and he got his first set of adult clothes, he was given a pair of breeches. He was said to have been breeched.
Oh.
As a sort of a ceremonial, here are your breeches, you're now a man kind of thing. And breeches were so called because of the word breach, meaning a gap or a separation, like the breach in the hull of a boat.
Yes.
Because these things are in two pieces, one for either leg. So they're breeches.
Trousers and the military are
Yes.
quite interesting, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean, we were talking about sort of, wearing them on a horse and battle and things. They're quite useful.
Yeah.
Probably the second most important thing after the stirrup
Yes.
in terms of fighting on horseback.
Yes.
Because you don't want to slide around on a sweaty arse. I'm talking about the horse's arse.
The horse, not the soldier. Yeah.
Well, probably both, actually. But yeah, so there are lots of things that have been invented for military trousers. So, for example, that you might have seen like guardsmen wearing trousers with what's called a cashmere stripe. It's not actually made of cashmere. It's the style of the stripe.
Okay.
So like this red stripe going down the black trouser.
Oh, yes, I picture that, yeah.
Or in dress clothes, if you're wearing a morning suit or white tie, you often get like a satin
strip down the side, don't you? Yeah, that's right.
And interestingly, because that satin stripe down the side of a trouser is reflecting the red stripe down a soldier's trouser, clergymen, because they're not allowed to wear anything that the militia would wear,
Sure.
aren't allowed to wear trousers with a stripe on them in church.
Right, okay. Oh, how interesting. What if you're at a formal church-related do and you have occasion to wear a tux? Would they go out of their way to get tux trousers that don't have the satin stripe down the side?
Yes.
That's fantastic. So there are clergyman-specific tuxedo trousers available.
Yes.
That's
I
brilliant.
don't know how available, or whether you just go and buy a pair of black trousers. But yes.
Oh, wonderful.
But I mean, in the military, the trousers have sort of come on by leaps and bounds. And in the 30s, in 1938, the British Army created a battle dress, and part of the battle dress was what we now know as cargo pants.
Okay, yeah.
So they're sort of like very useful trousers with pockets for things.
Yes.
The Americans will tell you the Americans invented them, but they were invented in Britain in 1938.
Jolly good. Go us. And that is quite a change, isn't it? You sort of go back to Napoleonic Wars and things like that. They're all just wearing these sort of plain white/beige cotton trousers, which must have shown up the dirt terribly.
Yeah, sort of chinos.
Yes, exactly.
Again,
that, yeah.
19th century military.
What chinos are?
Chinos, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are they called chinos? Were they invented by a chap called Chino?
I think it was after the song.
Chino. Right.
Actually, I was talking about women wearing trousers as a rebellious thing.
Yeah.
There was a suffragette in 1851. She wore these trousers.
Okay.
And the sort of trousers that she wore were sort of Turkish trousers. They're sort of like they look like Turkish trousers.
Yeah.
This woman's name was Amelia Bloomer.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Is that why we have bloomers?
That's why we have bloomers.
Oh, do you know what? If I weren't taking part in this podcast, I would be listening to this podcast just because of facts like that. That's wonderful.
Oh, we talked about riding.
Yes.
Obviously, jodhpurs.
Oh, of course, jodhpurs. Yes.
I have a pair of jodhpurs.
Oh, for goodness sake, of course you do.
Of course you do. Do you know, I sleep bought them. I had a dream about wearing jodhpurs and half chaps, and I kind of went online and bought them and then went back to sleep.
Oh, great.
They arrived like 2 days later.
2 days later, you get a pair of jodhpurs through the post.
Yeah. Yeah, but jodhpurs are, as you can imagine, from a place called Jodhpur or Jodhpur.
That rather makes sense.
Yes, in India. And jodhpurs replaced breeches. We talked about breeches.
Yes, okay.
So when riding, they were felt to be much more comfortable to ride in.
Okay.
And they were adopted by the British from the Indians who were wearing them in Jodhpur.
And are they kind of, I'm picturing sort of almost like a calf skin suede feel to those?
They come in all sorts. I mean, they come in the sort of same material as chinos. They come in sort of quite a thick material because you want to protect yourself from the horse.
Yeah.
Jodhpurs are actually made from twill, or as it's sometimes called, cavalry twill.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Brilliant. Cavalry twill.
Yes. I mean, it's not just the army or the cavalry that have their own trousers. The Royal Navy has their own trousers too.
Do they?
Bell bottoms.
Oh, yes, of course.
There are lots of different theories about why bell bottoms were invented for the Navy.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is because if you fall overboard, you want to be able to get your clothes off as fast as possible.
Sure.
So you need trousers that will slip over your shoes.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
Another thing somebody was saying is that you can actually use them as a flotation device because there's lots of material and you can sort of tie the ends up and sort of put some air in them and do it that way. But they were introduced into the Royal Navy in the mid-19th century, so about 1860.
Okay.
And they were actually kept, bell-bottoms were in the Navy until 1977, when there was a new uniform for the Navy, and that replaced bell-bottoms with flares.
Right, okay, yes.
But flares, what I quite like about Star Trek is if you look at Star Trek, the trousers in Star Trek, because they're technically on a ship, are flared.
Yeah. That's a great observation. Just as you were talking about bell-bottoms in the Navy, I thought, oh, didn't they used to wear those in the original series of Star Trek? I don't quite remember whether they were bell-bottoms or flares or somewhere between the two, but they were distinctly fuller in the lower leg.
They were. And I think deliberately because it's like a ship.
Yes.
And they were a bit short. They didn't sort of hit the ankles very much.
No, you're right.
There was a boot that they wore as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And the idea of trousers being slightly shorter, it's kind of around about the 1940s, 1950s.
Right.
When the capri pant was introduced.
Ooh, I'm not familiar with that.
So capri pants are sort of tight-fitting trousers that finish just above the ankle or between the ankle and the knee.
Okay. Oh, the sort of specifically ladies' trousers?
Yes.
Yeah. I think is pencil pusher?
Pedal
similar?
pushers.
Pedal pushers. Pencil
yes.
pushers.
Pencil pushers are people who work in an office. But then there's also sort of workwear.
Sure.
And there's a thing which I didn't know these existed. They're called chainsaw trousers.
Okay, never heard of those.
And chainsaw trousers are slightly thicker, as you might imagine, but they're designed so that the material, if you hit it with a chainsaw, the material actually binds up the mechanism in a chainsaw that stops the chainsaw from working.
Oh, really? Right. So they're safety trousers.
Safety trousers.
People
exactly.
using chainsaws.
It doesn't stop a chainsaw from going through them. But what it is as soon as the chainsaw hits them, the chainsaw stops.
It clogs it up and it stops it.
It clogs up.
Oh, that's very clever.
Isn't it?
As I was thinking through all the different types of trousers, I thought to myself, you're the smart one. You're going to be talking about trousers and jodhpurs and things like that. I'm the casual one. And I've always worn jeans. I've worn jeans since childhood and wear very little else. So I had a little bit of a look around jeans. I hadn't realised this. This episode has been full of brand new facts for me that I hadn't previously realised. Jean material, which again I didn't really know it was called jean material. Jeans are called jeans because they're made of jean, which is a type of material. And jean material originated in Genoa, in Italy, in the 16th century. The French name for Genoa is jean, and therefore they became known as jeans.
So what's this nonsense about Nîmes?
Right, so they came later. So the people of Nîmes in France actually tried to replicate that material.
Yeah.
Jean fabric was a little bit lower quality, a little bit more corduroy-esque. It was made of twilled cotton and originally was made for trousers for the Navy because it could be worn wet or dry. So it was sort of it
didn't waterlog.
Cloth. No, exactly, no. But then in Nîmes in France, only a handful of years later, they tried to reproduce this stuff, and their stuff was a bit coarser, a bit higher quality, a bit more hard wearing, and it came from Nîmes, so it was called de Nîmes. So you have these two names, both coming from the origin of the place, so jeans and denim.
Wow.
And different companies use different material. Eventually, denim proved to be more popular, more hard-wearing, higher quality, and therefore jeans are all made out of denim.
Yeah.
They've pretty much always been blue. I think that the jean material originally was just cotton-coloured because it was made of cotton, but very soon they started dyeing them blue because they were so hard-wearing. They were used by miners quite a lot, and they were coloured dark blue purely in order to hide the dirt from the mine, and they've been that colour ever since. They were originally dyed with indigo, which was all hand-picked from indigo bushes in Indian plantations, and then eventually turned into a synthetic dye. But yeah, so they've always sort of been the trousers of choice of the worker, the common man.
Yes.
Because they're hard-wearing and they're durable.
Unless you buy really, really expensive Japanese denim jeans.
Well, yes, but it's interesting how it sort of changed from one to the other. It used to be a very basic. The Navy wore it, miners wore it, people in India from a small dockside village in India called Dongri, they used this material to make what became dungarees.
Oh no!
Yep, that was around the 17th century. They were very popular in the 17th century in the working classes in northern Italy. There are an awful lot of paintings from around that time sort of showing dock workers and labourers, and they're all wearing jeans.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the 1600s, and you think, wow, they're wearing jeans in the 1600s. But then you get this fella called Levi Strauss. I hadn't realised. I feel a little bit sorry for a fella called Jacob Davis. So Levi Strauss and his brother from Germany, but moved to America, they operated a general dry goods store, a sort of a hardware store. And then this tailor from San Francisco called Jacob Davis came along to Levi Strauss and said, hey, can we sort of work together? I'd like to put some rivets in some trousers because I think it would help them be more durable.
Yes.
We'll patent these rivets, we'll put them in the stress points on the trousers. So they got together and did this. So Davis was the tailor, he was the clothes maker, he just came to Levi Strauss for the rivets. But as a result of this, they received a US patent in 1873, patent number 139121, for an improvement in fastening pocket openings on trousers. And they came up with this entire idea of putting these little rivets, which are the logo, really, of Levi jeans now. But it was Davis who was the tailor.
Yes.
I feel a bit sorry for him.
Well, the Levi's logo, isn't it? It's a pair of horses trying to tear apart a pair of trousers.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Shows how durable they are.
To show how strong they were. Yeah.
And then they sort of made this transition from workwear to fashionable clothing with the help of James Dean in the movie Rebel Without a Cause. Because they were the workwear, he was a young, rebellious fella who was sort of wearing these everyday trousers and suddenly made them cool. And from that point forward, jeans have just been an absolutely ubiquitous fashion statement. They are what pretty much all of us wear now.
When I was younger, there was a big campaign for Levi's, which was featured Nick Kamen in a pair of 501s in a laundrette, which became iconic. It's like this famous commercial of Nick Kamen taking his trousers off in a laundrette.
Oh, yes, that's right, yes.
And sort of washing them, because it's all about pre-shrunk and
they dry to fit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's all like that. There's another one with somebody in a bath getting their Levi's to fit. Yeah. And they've actually just done a new one, which is with Beyonce.
All right.
Washing her jeans, her Levi's in a laundrette. Great. But the other company that was making jeans at the time was a company called Brutus. So if you remember Brutus jeans.
Not heard of those.
You won't have heard of them, but you will have heard the song.
Right.
So there was a very famous jingle writer called David Dundas.
Right.
Who wrote a jingle for Brutus called, it then became released as a single and got very high up in the charts.
Right.
Which sort of, it basically went, I put Brutus jeans on, I pull my Brutus jeans on. So this Jeans On song went into the charts. And then a few years later, it was used, and I don't know whether they realised it was originally used by Brutus and then changed into a song without the word Brutus in it, by Wrangler.
Oh, really?
So Wrangler have used it quite recently.
Oh, how funny.
To sell Wranglers.
Great.
But the song, the Brutus Jeans song, was written by David Dundas and Roger Greenaway.
Okay.
Roger Greenaway was the chap who wrote a jingle for Coke, which went, I'd like to teach the world to sing.
Oh, that, yes.
So Dundas and Greenaway, who did the Brutus thing, have a link to Coke as well. So Coke and jeans, it's all kind of very...
Right, yeah.
Very 50s.
50s teenager coolness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not lip-smacking, thirst-quenching Pepsi, is it?
Thank you very much. No, it isn't.
You mentioned there the Levi 501s. Yeah. I don't know about the 01 bit, but the 5 comes from the fact that they have 5 pockets.
Oh.
So Levi Strauss & Company invented that pointless little pocket that you have on the right-hand side of your jeans that's inside the other pocket, which, you sort of might put tickets or change or whatever.
Yeah.
Apparently, originally, it was designed as a watch pocket.
Oh, that makes sense.
Back in the days
For
when
your
you had a
fob
pocket watch.
Yes.
Yeah. So, originally trousers just had two pockets, one on each side of the thigh. Levi's created the 4-row ones, which had two pockets at the back, so there are 4 pockets. And then they added the watch pocket, making 5 pockets, which is why you get 5-0 ones. Yeah.
Interesting. There is actually an official no pants day.
Oh, is there?
It's an official holiday.
Right.
And there's a no trousers on the tube day.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Which happens in January. So this episode's going out just after then.
Yes.
In fact, I think no trousers day was on the 12th or 13th of January this year.
Yeah.
When basically people just show up on the underground. And the idea is that you don't wear trousers. You're just wearing pants. Men and
Underpants.
women. Underpants. Men and women. And you just pretend that nothing is wrong. You just
I see. So you don't acknowledge the fact at all.
You don't acknowledge other people who aren't wearing their trousers.
Brilliant.
You just you act as though nothing is happening.
Yeah. What fun. Have you taken part?
No, I haven't actually. I quite fancied it. And
seems like a
had
you
this
kind of thing.
episode been recorded before that, I might have done it.
You'd have gone for it. Excellent.
What about turn-ups?
Oh, yes, turn-ups.
So turn-ups were invented, apparently, in the 1890s by Edward VII.
Okay.
And he invented cuffs, or turn-up. They're also called cuffs.
Yeah.
And they were sort of a stylish way to end a trouser rather than just having it finished, and they sat on your shoes.
Yes, that's right. So you deliberately get trousers that were too long so that you could turn them up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So turn-ups were invented sort of in the 1890s.
Oh, right.
And they were banned in World War II.
Were they really?
Well, the thing is that turn-ups use up a bit more fabric than straight trousers. Yeah. And when you've got shortages.
Sure, yes. I think I seem to remember that Al Capone was quite a fan of turn-ups. If you look at old black and white photos of Al Capone and his gangs, they've usually got some quite hefty cuffs on the bottom of their trousers.
I think the 1930s were a time for turn-ups.
Yeah.
And you could occasionally find coins in them and things.
Yes, okay, yes.
Dropped out of your pocket.
And they were rather popular in the punk movement as well, weren't they?
Yes,
you can
exaggerated
really
cuffs on
exaggerated.
trousers.
You can sort of picture, punks roaming around wearing their Doc Martin boots, and their jeans are sort of turned up, several inches above the top of the boots.
Yes,
you get the full impact of the boots.
And the other thing about turning up jeans is that you see the inseam, and sometimes a lot of work goes into the inseam.
Oh,
and
right.
if you turn them up, then you get to see that part of the
show it
jean
off.
that you wouldn't normally get to see.
Oh, that's brilliant.
We should have investigated when people switched from fly buttons to zippers.
Oh, we should.
And I'll bet you there are Factoralites, people listening to this, out there, who will know when that happened.
I bet they will. They're that kind of crowd.
And if you do, you can either go onto our Facebook page and tell us, or you can write to us at hello@factoraly.com.
Indeed.
Or when you leave your 5-star review, you can make a note of it as a note.
As a little PS.
And those are just the ways you can talk to us. There are other things you can do.
Of course there are. There are many things you could do. Once you've left your wonderful, glowing 5-star review for us, you could go and tell all your friends. You could be chatting down the pub or at work, and you could say, hey, I listened to this fantastic podcast with these two chaps telling me all of these interesting random facts. You should have a listen.
Or you can subscribe. I mean, I'm assuming you already have because you're listening to us.
One would imagine.
Yes, which would
but
be
if
nice.
not, you can. Well, thank you so much for coming along and listening to this episode of
Factoraly.
Please come again next time. Bye for now.
Au revoir.